Have you ever wondered why some people live as if they were on a constant emotional roller coaster? Why there are moments when you feel on top of the world and seconds later in the deepest hell? Today, we're going to talk about a condition that affects millions of people around the world, but still carries a lot of prejudice and misinformation. Imagine waking up every day, not knowing which version of yourself will appear in the mirror. One moment you're radiant, loving intensely. The next you're convinced that the entire world has abandoned you. This isn't drama. It's the reality of those living with borderline personality disorder. Maria, 28, told me that for years she believed she was crazy or too dramatic. She didn't know that her intense feelings, her constant fear of abandonment, and her seemingly disproportionate reactions had a name and, most importantly, treatment. Her story is not unique. We live in a society that quickly labels those who don't fit expected emotional patterns. We call dramatic, difficult, or unstable those who experience life with an intensity that frightens us. But what if I told you that this intensity can also be a transformative force? Borderline personality disorder is not a life sentence. It's a neurobiological condition that affects how we process emotions and relate to the world. It's not weakness, it's not lack of control, it's not drama. It's a neurological reality that deserves understanding, not judgment. Today, more than ever, we need to talk about mental health without romanticizing it, but also without demonizing it. Borderline affects about 2.7% of the world's population, according to recent studies. This means millions of people are living this experience right now, often in silence and isolation. The curious thing is that many creative personalities throughout history probably lived with characteristics similar to borderline. This emotional intensity that frightens us so much can be the same that generates art, innovation, and deep human connections. The difference lies in how we deal with it. But here's the crucial point. Having borderline doesn't mean being condemned to a life of suffering. With adequate treatment, understanding, and support, it's possible to live a full, rich, and meaningful life. The journey may be challenging, but it's not impossible. Why then does so much stigma still exist? Why do people run away when they hear about personality disorders? Perhaps because we fear what we don't understand. Perhaps because emotional intensity reminds us of our own vulnerability. Today, you'll discover that borderline is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a journey of self-knowledge and growth. You'll understand that behind every crisis, there's a person fighting to be understood, to be loved, to find their place in the world. The term borderline emerged in 20th century psychoanalysis when professionals realized that some patients didn't fit perfectly into traditional categories. They weren't classic neurotics nor psychotics, but lived on a border between these two emotional worlds. Dr. Mark Zimmerman, renowned psychiatrist at South County Psychiatry, explains that this nomenclature, although controversial, reflects an important clinical reality. People with borderline experience emotional instability that places them in a unique position on the spectrum of mental disorders. Historically, psychiatry was slow to understand this condition. For decades, borderline patients were misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and frequently rejected by health professionals themselves. There was an implicit prejudice that these people were difficult to treat or manipulative. Ancient philosophy already recognized that emotional intensity could be both a blessing and a curse. Aristotle spoke about the importance of emotional balance, but also recognized that great passions could generate great achievements. This duality is central to understanding borderline. Thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard explored existential anguish and the intensity of human feeling. His reflections on anxiety, despair, and authenticity echo many of the experiences reported by people with borderline. The difference lies in the intensity and frequency of these experiences. Carl Jung introduced the concept that our psychological shadow contains both destructive and creative aspects. For people with borderline, this shadow may be more intense and more present in daily life, but can also be a source of profound understanding about the human condition. Modern neuroscience reveals that the brains of people with borderline process emotions differently. Areas responsible for emotional regulation, like the prefrontal cortex, may be less active, while structures like the amygdala may be hyperactive. This isn't a defect, it's a difference. Dr. Mashal Khan from New York Presbyterian Hospital emphasizes that understanding these neurobiological differences is fundamental to demystifying borderline. It's not about lack of willpower or character, but about a specific brain configuration that requires specialized therapeutic approaches. Contemporary society, with its demands for constant productivity and emotional stability, can be especially challenging for people with borderline. We live in a culture that values emotional control, often ignoring that intensity can also be a valuable quality. Throughout history, many notable figures probably lived with characteristics similar to borderline. Artists, writers, musicians, and innovators frequently report experiences of extreme emotional intensity, turbulent relationships, and constant search for identity and meaning. The neurodiversity movement teaches us that neurological differences are not necessarily pathologies to be cured, but human variations that deserve understanding and support. This perspective is transforming how we see borderline and other mental disorders. The evolution of the borderline concept reflects larger changes in our understanding of the human mind. We've moved from a punitive and moralizing vision to a more compassionate and scientific approach. This transformation offers real hope for millions of people. Borderline manifests as a persistent pattern of emotional instability, turbulent interpersonal relationships, and a fluctuating self-image. But let's go beyond diagnostic manuals and understand how this really affects people's lives. Imagine that your emotions are like a poorly tuned radio. Small external stimuli can cause major interference in your internal signal. An apparently innocent comment can trigger an emotional storm. A different look can be interpreted as total rejection. João, a 25-year-old young man, described his experience this way: "It's like I feel everything amplified. When I'm happy, it's euphoria. When I'm sad, it's despair. There's no middle ground." This intensity isn't a choice, it's how his brain processes emotional information. Interpersonal relationships become emotional minefields. A person with borderline may intensely idealize someone, seeing only positive qualities, and then, faced with any disappointment, move to extreme devaluation. This all-or-nothing pattern reflects difficulty integrating positive and negative aspects of people. The fear of abandonment isn't paranoia, it's a visceral and terrifying experience. Small signs, like delays in responding to messages or changes in tone of voice, can trigger real panic. This fear can lead to behaviors that, ironically, push away the people who matter most. Instability in self-image is another central aspect. In one moment, a person may feel confident and capable. In the next, completely inadequate and worthless. This fluctuation isn't superficial, it's a deep experience of not knowing exactly who one is. Impulsive behaviors may include excessive spending, risky sexual relationships, substance abuse, dangerous driving, or episodes of self-harm. These aren't whims, but desperate attempts to deal with unbearable emotional pain. The sensation of chronic emptiness is perhaps one of the most difficult aspects to explain. It's not just sadness or boredom, it's an experience of absence, as if there were a hole in the chest that can never be filled. This sensation can be more painful than depression itself. Dissociative episodes can occur during extreme stress. The person may feel disconnected from themselves or reality, as if watching their own life from outside. These episodes are protective mechanisms of the mind against emotional overload. Statistics reveal that about 75% of people diagnosed with borderline are women, but recent research suggests this may reflect diagnostic biases. Men with borderline may be more frequently diagnosed with other disorders or remain undiagnosed. Comorbidity is common. Depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and substance abuse frequently accompany borderline. This doesn't mean the person is worse, but that they need integrated and personalized therapeutic approaches. Family and social environment play a crucial role. Dysfunctional families, childhood trauma, abuse, or neglect may contribute to borderline development. But it's important to remember that not all people exposed to trauma develop the disorder, suggesting genetic and neurobiological components. Studies show that first-degree relatives of people with borderline are 5 times more likely to develop the condition. This isn't genetic determinism, but indicates that hereditary factors may create vulnerabilities that, combined with environmental factors, can lead to borderline. Work becomes challenging when intense emotions interfere with concentration ability and relationships with colleagues. Many people with borderline are highly creative and productive, but may face difficulties in traditional corporate environments that don't understand their needs. Academic life can also be affected. Emotional instability may harm school performance, but many people with borderline develop compensatory strategies and achieve significant academic success, especially in creative or human areas. Romantic relationships are particularly challenging. Emotional intensity may be initially attractive, but can become overwhelming. Fear of abandonment can lead to possessive behaviors or, paradoxically, sabotage of the relationship itself. Parenting with borderline requires specialized support. Many people with borderline are loving and dedicated parents, but may need help developing emotional regulation strategies that don't negatively affect their children. The health system isn't always prepared to deal with borderline. Many professionals still carry prejudices or lack adequate training. This can lead to wrong diagnoses or inadequate treatments, perpetuating the cycle of suffering. Spirituality can be both refuge and challenge. Some people with borderline find great comfort in spiritual practices, while others may experience intense existential crises that require specialized accompaniment. Financial impact cannot be ignored. Impulsive behaviors can lead to financial problems, while the need for continuous treatment can be costly. Adequate mental health policies are essential to ensure access to treatment. Recovery is not linear. There will be good days and difficult days. Progress may be followed by apparent setbacks. This doesn't mean failure, but is a natural part of the learning process of new ways to deal with emotions. But here's the truth that few dare to say: our society is afraid of emotional intensity. We've created a world where showing vulnerability is seen as weakness, where expressing deep emotions is uncomfortable for others. The biggest prejudice doesn't come from ignorance, but from fear. Fear that this intensity is contagious, fear of not knowing how to respond, fear of our own emotional vulnerability. So instead of learning to navigate these deep waters, we prefer to avoid them. The big lie is that people with borderline are dramatic or manipulative. This perception is not only cruel, but scientifically incorrect. Their reactions are genuine, their pain is real, their needs are valid. The system perpetuates this stigma through poorly prepared professionals, uninformed families, and a culture that values emotional stability above authenticity. How many people could have had different lives if they had received understanding instead of judgment? The most surprising evidence is that many people with borderline develop extraordinary empathetic abilities. Their emotional sensitivity, when well channeled, can become a source of deep human connection and understanding about the human condition. Recent studies show that, with adequate treatment, most people with borderline show significant improvement. We're not talking about cure in the traditional sense, but about learning to live fully with a specific emotional configuration. The real tragedy isn't having borderline, but living in a society that doesn't understand or doesn't offer adequate support. How many talents have we lost? How many contributions have we failed to receive because we didn't know how to value neurodiversity? The self-advocacy movement of people with borderline is changing this narrative. They are organizing, educating professionals and the public, and showing that it's possible to live with dignity and purpose, even with significant emotional challenges. Now, I invite you to deep reflection. How have you been dealing with your own intense emotions? How have you reacted when someone close expresses emotional vulnerability? Don't we all have a bit of borderline in us? The first step toward transformation is self-awareness. Recognizing that emotional intensity isn't a defect, but a different way of experiencing life. Some people feel more deeply, and this can be both challenging and extraordinary. For those living with borderline, know that you're not alone. There are effective treatments, support communities, and specialized professionals who can help. Dialectical behavior therapy, developed specifically for borderline, teaches practical emotional regulation skills. For family and friends, the best help is education and patience. Learning about borderline, establishing healthy boundaries, and seeking your own support are ways to care for both yourself and the person you love. The recovery journey is possible. Thousands of people with borderline are living full lives, maintaining healthy relationships, building meaningful careers, and contributing positively to their communities. You can also be part of this hopeful statistic. Society is changing. Mental health movements, greater awareness about neurodiversity, and advances in research are creating a more welcoming world for people with borderline. Every conversation like this contributes to this transformation. Remember, having borderline doesn't define who you are. It's a part of your experience, not the totality of your identity. You are unique, valuable, and capable of growth. Your emotional intensity, when well-directed, can be a source of creativity, empathy, and extraordinary human connection. The future is hopeful. Every day, new research reveals paths to well-being, new treatments prove effective, and more people find ways to live fully with borderline. You are part of this collective journey of overcoming and growth. Arm yourself with knowledge. The truth simply sets you free.